angels are also referred to as Elam. So the Alshich compares the idea of the Avos to the malachim. And we talk about it's very often talked about in Chazal, a comparison between the malachim and the Avos. The Avos being kind of the model, they're like the top thing that we aspire to, the highest level that we could attain. So when we compare, our potential, so that can be compared to the malachim and what their function is. There's a very big vikiyach, there's an argument in some of the Kabbalim about, and philosophers, Jewish philosophers saying, philosophers in general, but there's, we talk about a hierarchy in the creation, right? So the malachim preceded man in terms of creation, and there's always been a kind of a competition between the status of the malachim and our status as Yidden. There was always they go into this great depth, but there's always been kind of a jealousy, and we know when Hashem said, let us make man, it was this idea of, it was an idea of invoking the Beis Din Shalmala, to get the malachim together, to be maskim, to agree to the creation of man, because it kind of upset the balance of power. In fact, actually, Hashem's taina was that if I don't create man in the tachtoinim, in the lower domain, then there will be an imbalance of power, because he said I have now Hashem created the upper worlds and the lower world. So if I've got a representation, something that represents me or is similar to me in some ways in the upper worlds, meaning the malachim, and I don't have it in the lower worlds, then it's going to be an imbalance. So I have to put man there in order to have something similar to me, a tselem elokim also in the lower worlds. Because just as the malachim have seichel, they have attributes of Hashem, and there is representation in the higher world, so he has to have something in the lower worlds that balances that. But at the same time, is a question of who really has the upper hand and who is on a higher level. So a lot of the philosophers wanted to say that the malachim are on a higher level in a sense, because they can certainly are in a position to understand things on a higher level. They're not limited by a physical body that's holding them back in terms of how much they can experience. I mean, they don't have physical, our information, how we gather information and data on which to make decisions, which to base our knowledge on, is based on what we get through our physical senses. And the angels don't have physical, and the fact that our senses are physical limits them to a great extent. They can't perceive things, right? Limits us. We can't perceive things on a higher level than they should be. There have been examples of these after near-death experiences or after-death experiences where people went out of their bodies and they were able to see things that they couldn't see. Like this woman was blind from birth, and she had this. They actually virtually killed her. I mean, they took away all of her brain activity. And they are actually monitoring this, in the hospital, I believe was the story. And she was all of a sudden able to see when she wasn't able to see through her physical eyes. When she came back into her body again, she again was limited by her physical eyes. But the fact that she was outside of her physical eyes, she was able to, the aspect of sight in its pure form was able to see things that she couldn't see otherwise. So we know that they talk about the choize of Lublin. Yeah. There's all the seer of Lublin. Why was he called the choize? Besides by choize being a person with ruach hakodesh, but he was virtually blind, and he could and he was able to physically describe people exactly what they looked like and exactly where people were, and in different areas of the world, through this extra sight that he had, which was not a physical sight. So obviously the angels are able to perceive things on a much higher level because they're not limited by the body. On the other hand, we have aspects that put us on a higher level than the malachim. Besides the fact that, of course, we have the Yetzer Hara, and therefore there was a big, controversy, let's say, when Hashem decided to give the Torah to the Yidden, whether he should give it to the malachim, said that they wanted it. And he was this thing that Hashem created the world with and was, saved for so much time, for thousands of years, and it was the greatest treasure that he has to give. And they felt, to give this to people, Yitzhahara, and everything is just going to bring Chilul Hashem. It's going to cause Hashem to be disgraced, as opposed to leading to, the kind of, to fulfilling the high potential. When you look at the Torah in terms of its spiritual treasures, on the highest level of the soidas of Torah, the secrets of the Torah. So obviously man would be able to understand things on a much lower level than what malachim would. So Hashem countered that by saying that, what about the mitzvahs of the Torah, that according to Peshat, with the plain meaning of the Torah, you have to, the whole idea of it is to fight the Yitzhahara, and then the malachim don't have Yitzhahara. So that was his justification for giving to man. But so in a sense, because Hashem gave us the Torah, and because we have a Yitzhahara and we have the capability of fighting a Yitzhahara, so that puts us in a sense on a higher level than the malachim, and makes us the reason for the whole creation of the world. In other words, Hashem doesn't need. It's no big deal for Hashem to create being on an extremely high level that can perceive on a very high level and can has virtually unlimited potential and can be flying here and flying there and be in a million places at the same time and have this be this limitless perfect creature. That's not a big deal for Hashem. What Hashem was much more interested in, and what Hashem gets nachas from, and gets a pleasure from, is seeing how we cope with the challenges that we have in this world that He's not controlling our behavior. And we're not simply not. I personally don't think it's fair to call an angel a robot because he doesn't have a Yetzirah, any more than I don't think it's fair to call an animal a robot. I mean, an animal also has limited in terms of his choices, but at the same time, he has a personality, he has a life, he has, there's recently just a story came out about a lioness that killed her husband, the lion, in a zoo. She actually killed her own husband that she had children with. And they said it was a very strange type of behavior that they've virtually never seen before. And all it shows is that animals are not, as predictable as we think. We think we understand them, but really there's a lot more complicated things going on there. So, Kal V'chomer, Ben Moshe, Kal V'chomer, a malach is a pretty complicated being, and there's lots of interesting things going on with malachim in terms of how they relate to Hashem, and getting punished from time, falling, and all kinds of things going on with malachim. It's not so easy, black and white, to understand exactly what's going on there. And also, malachim have a very, very important job. I mean, they are the intermediary. They're the agents to get things done. In terms of the world, they're the messengers. Ones that, especially in these parshas and breshis, they fulfill a very very central role in terms of kind of being the intermediary between communicating instructions from Hashem and carrying out the instructions of Hashem and everything. So that's very important. And the other thing is their role in terms of praising Hashem. And that in the heavenly choirs and things like that, this is their avodah. This is all going on every day, 3 times a day, that they're praising Hashem, and this is the model for us. This is the model for us in terms of knowing how we have to praise Hashem. Because we look at the way they praise Hashem, and that's showing us what we should praise Hashem. And we even get some of the words that we say from the words that they say. And the whole thing that Nasan and Ishma we got from them, and Shem Kavod Malchis V'Od we got from them, and all kinds of things that our tzaddikim, when they were in Shemayim, they heard the malachim saying a certain thing. From the Rav Shulchan Aruch, he talks about where do we get Shem Kavod Malchis V'Od, and why do we say it out loud on Yom Kippur? Because when Moshe Rabbeinu was in Shemayim, he heard them saying it. And he was so impressed by it, he thought it was such a beautiful thing that he wanted to bring it down to the Yidden in this world. And so he brought it down. But the problem was he was afraid to say it out loud because it would be as if he stole it. So he couldn't say it. The malachim shouldn't. At least it shouldn't be like we're boasting that we took it over or something like that. It would be like a chutzpah. So instead, he instructed us to say it very, very quietly. But on Yom Kippur, because we dress in white and we don't eat and we're like malachim, we resemble malachim, so we can get away with saying it without getting the jealousy of the malachim again. But again, you have to understand that the malachim's job is to to protect Hashem. You know, they're like the security forces in a sense. They're the ones that are out to make sure that you know there's law and order. That's why they're very much into din, and you know the Beis Din Shema. They want to make sure that things are under control in the lower worlds, and all the whole creation is doing what Hashem wants. And they're very offended and very upset when man doesn't do what he's supposed to do. Whereas Hashem always has to be saying, you know, he's always responding. So they say, so why did you create man to make all this trouble? And he's saying to them, but you know, I created tshuva, and that's the whole point of it. You know. What they don't realize is that they are created just for us, just because of us. In other words, the world was created for us, and everything in the world was created to serve us. So their whole reason for existence, the reason actually, is only to service, you know, us in various ways. I mean, they're even though they may go contrary to us and they may bring, you know, various, you know, complaints against us, and you know, we may have a lot of troubles from them, but their whole role is here only because we're here. So that's the main thing that we can say, that, you know, that we trump them in a sense. We take precedence over them because we are the whole reason why they're here. So that even though they may be much more powerful and much more, you know, and know a lot of stuff that we don't know, but in terms of why they're here, that's the only reason they're here. It also brings down that there's another difference, is that there's a couple other differences. One difference is that we are able to do certain types of miracles that they can't do. It was like Shemesh Begivan Doim, something like that Shia told the sun to stop. That was something that, you know, that turned over the whole laws of creation. That's not something that a malach can do. A malach can't.
It's commanded by Hashem?
Huh?
It's tzivui from Hashem?
Apparently, that's not the type of tzivui that Hashem would ask them to carry out, because maybe that's beyond their capability. There was that type of a thing, something that only a person could do. Then there's another aspect of them, is that they do not. Each one of them has its own midah. Each one has his own characteristic. That one is the midah of Chesed, and one's the midah of Gvura. You've got Michwel and Gabriel is Gevura, and Uriel is I think Tiferes, whatever. Each one represents its own midah. Whereas a person is capable of combining several midah. And we're like so they're a very simple, much more simple kind of a Messias that's more like one track mind kind of thing. And we see that each Malach does his own shlichus, like we see in this parsha. You know, the same one that went to heal Avram also went to rescue Lot, because he was in a position of healing and rescuing, that kind of thing. The other ones, each one had, you know, the different one was to overturn stone. Each one had his own job based on his own particular midah, what he's supposed to do. So anyway, so it says Hori Lashem b'nei Elim. So David HaMelech is saying, what can we give Hashem? In other words, you think of Malach, so he can give praise to Hashem because he's so powerful and he's so great, and he's, you know, he's so perfect, and he can, you know, sing, you know, they have the heavenly choirs and everything, and it's so beautiful and all this stuff. So he can really give to Hashem. But what us little guys down here, what do we have to give to Hashem? So he says, what we have to give to Hashem is tshuva masim toivim. That's, you know, Torah. The things that Hashem gave us to do, that's our job to serve Hashem. And really, in the end, Hashem gets more nachas from those things that we do with the limited capabilities we have than what he gets over what he gets from the malachim. So that's Hoved Hashem Kuvov Oiz. We have to give Hashem this Kovod, and Oiz is the Torah, and Kovod is Kavod Shemaim, by serving Hashem and by showing that Hashem exists in this lower world, which seems to be where Hashem has made himself invisible to a large extent.